Language and communication are byproducts of human intelligence, and the overall need to exchange and relay information or thoughts has motivated humans to create many language dialects and families. Speaking or writing a language is a very direct form of communication, allowing one to express exactly what their mind is thinking. However, there are other forms of more abstract languages that are often overlooked. Music is that universal form of language that speaks to people of all linguistic backgrounds. Music conveys happiness, music conveys sadness, music conveys anger, music conveys love, music conveys emotion. And that's something that I find so amazing about humans, just how the reception of certain frequencies in a certain order can create such powerful feelings. And my keen interest towards this abstract form of language has motivated me to select music performance as my topic in ISM. When I was 6 years old, I was forced to start taking piano lessons, and with my weak toddler fingers and my unmotivated mindset, I hated it. Every day I would dread that creaky wooden bench and those out-of-tune dusty piano keys. I eventually quit piano and moved on to drum set around the age of 8. And unlike piano, the lessons and the practice times were bearable. I didn't really know what I was planning to do with drums, but after I joined percussion in the band program at Hunt Middle School, I began to realize that music was the only thing that I generally enjoyed. It was something that I was good at. I used to always be insecure about my identity, but through music, I found myself. David Dong? Who's that? Well, I'm going to tell you. My name is David Dong. I'm a junior at Frisco High School, and I want to dedicate my life to music. Life truly takes on meaning when you become motivated. Set goals and charge after them in an unstoppable manner. Leigh Brown. The ISM program offers many opportunities as well as assignments that I would never even think of doing unless I was asked to do so. Searching for and analyzing certain articles online has proved to be incredibly helpful and has given me insight regarding the research part of music rather than the playing part. And the first group of articles that I analyzed were musical emotion and the benefits. And through music and education, the brain works harder. A student will have to transition between a musical and a logical approach during school days, between when they play their instruments or when they attend their core classes. And music also helps with spatial temporal skills, allowing students to visualize any sort of math problem. And again, music is an abstract form of language. It's emotional communication, and it provides a form of personal expression. And when watching a film or really doing anything, music over-exaggerates emotional moments that can completely change the tone of a situation. And the other incredibly useful article I studied was timpani tuning, and this was something that I really didn't think I could learn so much from an article. And generally, timpani are a completely ignored instrument. In middle school, this instrument is introduced to middle school percussionists, and they generally ignore it because it's just this big and scary instrument. Timpani are big copper bowls with a drum head over it, and it's just a really big and scary instrument. And since playing is ignored, tuning timpani is an almost forgotten art. And when tuning timpani, there are many numerous environmental factors that you have to take into account. There are climate changes and then humidity changes that change the notes from the heads. And I had a direct observation of this at Abilene when I was auditioning for All-State. We left the timpani in a truck all night long, and it was really cold. And the morning after, the timpani couldn't even hit some of the lower notes. We had to wait for 15 minutes and put them in a warm room so that they could, so the heads could stretch out again and they could hit all the notes. And overall, when playing timpani, you always have to be aware of what note they're on, whether it's sharp or flat, and it's just really great, precise ear training. And studying this article is also applied to my actual playing in terms of how hypersensitive I am to the playing, because the sound has a lot of areas to bounce once it gets inside the copper bowl, so I have to be very aware of how my hands are playing the timpani. And I was also able to learn more about the different occupations in the music industry by interviewing certain percussion teachers, composers, and performers in the area. So one group of professionals that I interviewed were the lesson teachers. Now the first one is Ed Soph. He's the UNT drum set lesson teacher. And his story is that he started playing professionally at the age of 14. And he was able to do this because his mentor had to leave a jazz group, and then Mr. Soph got to take his place. And just by taking this opportunity, he completely changed the path of his musical career. And he told me to always love what you're doing. And the next interviewee was Reed Paxton. He's the Liberty and Vandeventer Middle School private lesson teacher. And he taught me that students have to discover their passion. You can't teach a student to love music. and as a teacher, you simply act as a guide. The student has to discover their passion on their own, and however far they want to go in their lives with the music is dependent on them. And another group of professionals that I interviewed were the composers and the performers. There's Paul Rennick. He's the most well-known professional that I've interviewed. He's the UNT percussion lecturer, and prior to the interview, I thought he was going to be more of a teacher or a performer because he's the percussion director of the Santa Clara Vanguard. But he's actually more of a composer. And and not only does he compose, but he also teaches in many areas as well. Once a year, he has to teach in Taiwan. A couple times a month, he teaches in California. He still teaches at UNT, and a lot of times he does lectures outside of the school. And he also has to juggle all of those teaching experiences with a family life. And I just thought it was so amazing how he was able to juggle everything at once. And then another one that I interviewed, this was actually my very first interview, is with Drew Lang. He's the marimba lecturer at SMU, and he's the only freelance percussionist that I've actually interviewed. And even Mr. Lang informed me that freelance percussion is a very unstable category in terms of pay. So he also teaches at SMU along with performing. And he said that teach so that you can perform. You keep your playing in check through teaching, and teaching also provides a steady source of income. And the last person that I interviewed was Kevin Hanrahan. He's actually also a lesson teacher, and he's the founder of Odd River Percussion, and he's my mentor. Mr. Hanrahan has a bachelor's degree in music education from the Vandercook College of Music, and he has a master's degree in music performance from the University of Tennessee. And Mr. Hanrahan taught me that you would have to pick a professor that looks out for you. And overall, the information that he gave me was the most personal because he's already my lesson teacher and we are already acquaintances. So he says that you shouldn't pick a college based off of the prestige or the ranking, but based off of how much the professor looks out for their students and how much they can improve you as a player and as a teacher. And Mr. Hanrahan himself is a hard worker, and he's reached his current level of playing by becoming his own harshest critic. When he plays, he just says, I need to correct this, I need to correct that, and that's how he's become such a wonderful performer. And with our current mentor visits, we're putting a lot of our main focuses on music education. Almost all of my mentor visits with Mr. Hanrahan are at the various middle schools that he teaches at, with 6th grade percussion classes to 7th and 8th grade band classes. And through these visits, Mr. Hanrahan has taught me that college students that plan on teaching at middle schools have to learn about the different psychologies of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Despite the 1-year difference between each of them, they all think and respond very differently. So 6th graders, they're new to percussion, just got out of elementary school, and they're excited to play. And, they get to bang on stuff instead of sitting at a desk and taking a quiz. Then 7th graders, this is when there's the split. They're either interested or they're not. They're either the bottom band or they're the top band. So this is when you realize, does this kid really care about percussion? Are they going to move on with it? And then in 8th grade, this is the pre-high school level, and this is when you truly start judging their dedication. The bar is raised for high schoolers with marching bands, concert season, UIL, and percussion ensemble. So in 8th grade, this is when you really know who's gonna do well in these categories, who's gonna be willing to dedicate the time. And so far, I've only had 2 mentor visits, one with the 6th grade beginner percussionist, and one with a lower level 7th to 8th grade band. And so after 6th graders are 6th graders are put in their individual percussion classes to learn about the instrument in general. And after they reach 7th grade, they have to audition, and they're either placed in a top or a bottom band. So my second mentor visit, besides the one where we went over the mentor packet, was over the 7th grade bottom band class. And some observations that I noticed was that they didn't have any motivation. They felt forced to be there, and their habits didn't really carry over from 6th grade. 6th grade is fresh. When you start learning things, teachers expect your good habits to stay so that you can continue to play at a higher level as you advance. But not all of these kids kept their good habits, and they were often forgetful and distracted. One of the kids actually lost his sticks, and he would come into class every day saying, oh yeah, I still didn't buy new sticks. It's like coming to school without anything, like every day. And they're often distracted. And Mr. Hanrahan would say, oh yeah, you have to correct this. They correct it, he looks away, and then they go back to their old habits. So a lot of it's just how much they care about percussion and what level of importance it has. And then my third mentor visit was with the 6th grade beginners. And these guys were completely different from the bottom band class. They were enthusiastic, excited, and it was just a new process to them. And they had great starting habits. For example, Mr. Hanrahan would leave a metronome on, and before they're about to play, he would say down, up, down, up, down, up. to get their feet moving in time, and this is so that when they play, they can base their time and their hands off of their feet, and their feet is based off of the metronome. And I personally was never good at any of these. I couldn't really count rhythms, nor did I tap my feet. And I've somehow reached the level I am today, but I just think Mr. Hanrahan is doing a great job of setting every single kid up for success in the beginning. And overall, the bigger picture, why am I doing these mentor visits and what do I want to get out of them? So first of all, I just think it's really interesting to see a middle school class from a different point of view. Because the last time I was in a middle school class, I was observing the teacher to learn how to play, but now I'm observing the teacher to learn how to teach. And it's just a really great perspective in a classroom setting. It's very nostalgic. And overall, these mentor visits are similar to student teaching. In college, before students graduate for music education, they go to a high school and they actually have to observe the directors teach, and they conduct a piece. So it's like a prerequisite for student teaching, which is also a prerequisite for actual teaching. So yeah, it's preparing me to teach, but despite all of these assessment, interviews, and visits, I still have a lot to learn. So finally, my original work. For my original work, I composed a piece of marimba literature, and this idea was motivated simply by my desire to explore music. I focus on music performance every day with personal practice and in-school band classes, and my observation during mentor visits gave me insight in music education. However, I didn't put too much effort into music composition, nor do I have too much personal experience with it. So my original work was more of an experiment to see what I could do and see how much I could enjoy putting my musical ideas onto paper. In the process, I spent a lot of time thinking about how I would want the song to go. I would develop the musical ideas, I'd apply them, put them on the instrument, and if I liked it, I'd notate them and put them on my computer. And my priorities were, how does this sound or feel, and does it make musical sense? And the biggest hurdle that I really never got over was the suffering from the lack of ideas. A lot of times I'd find myself sitting on my bed, just staring at a wall because I don't know what to write next. And I'd go over endless possibilities in my mind and try to put it on the instrument. And overall, it was just a very grueling experience, and a lot of times it wasn't enjoyable. And it really tested my music theory and personal creativity to the max. And so now I'll play you guys a short excerpt of my composition entitled Flashback. And so in my composition, I would have the melody, and then I would decide what other notes I could put between the spaces. These embellishments would simply add more to the melody and give the piece its unique characteristics. I decided to title my composition Flashback in the middle of the composition process. The idea of this name came from feelings of nostalgia and comfortable memories as I reconnected with friends and people from my past. So I decided to finish the composition as background music to the happiest moments of my past, and it's the music that I'd want to hear when I remember my old friends and relationships. And some things that I've learned is that my knowledge of music theory is sufficient and it's quite pathetic. I lack a lot of music theory, which I plan to get back in college. And the main thing that I learned was that I really didn't enjoy composing. And music composition is something that's completely different from music performance. And I personally just love to perform, but when it comes to composing my own music, I just lack in that area. And I really love the product, but the process was actually grueling and not very enjoyable. And I most likely will not go down the path of music composition. However, I still find happiness in performing, as I'm also learning more about music education to pass on my love for music. Being able to dedicate the rest of my life to something that I love makes me excited for college and ready for the future that awaits me. music as an ISM topic is just so different from the rest because of how much it's based off of emotion and feelings, how it's no longer about the money, but it's about living life to the fullest, communicating through the abstract language known as music. Thank you.